Moin Freunde, es ist Samstag, ich habe heute Morgen einen Parkrun gemacht, also fühle ich mich ganz gut und ganz erfrischt und ich habe eine neue persönliche Bestzeit aufgestellt. Bevor ich mit der Arbeit anfange, möchte ich euch sagen, ich habe neue interessante Eigenschaften und Ähnlichkeiten zwischen verschiedenen europäischen Sprachen bemerkt. Und ihr wisst schon, dass ich sehr gerne darüber spreche. Also ich möchte ein paar davon erklären. I'm going to switch to English because it's hard to describe differences between languages in one of my non-native languages. First, really interesting similarity relates to reflexive verbs. You might be thinking, what's a reflexive verb? Well, we do kind of have them in English. They're just not nearly as big a thing as they are in other European languages. It's a verb that you or the subject of the sentence does to itself. So, for example, I wash myself, or like, I slap myself, you know, that kind of thing. As I said, it's not nearly as common as it is in, for example, German, where in German, so many verbs, especially to do with the daily routine, although not exclusively, have to be reflexive. You know, you don't just shower in German, you shower yourself. Ich dusche mich. Wir duschen uns. You don't just get dressed in German, you dress yourself. Ich ziehe mich an. And I'm increasingly finding in French and Spanish, it's very similar. And what I find particularly interesting is a lot of the same verbs are reflexive in French and Spanish as they are in German, which is interesting, A, because those are two different language families, but B, even though you might be thinking, well, of course, you know, a verb that's part of the daily routine and it's something that, like, you obviously are physically doing to yourself. Of course those verbs are going to be reflexive, and multiple languages will sort of come up with that idea. Which, true, I do think that explains part of it, but there are other verbs in these languages that are also reflexive, even though they're not obviously like physically reflexive actions that you do to yourself. One great example is the verb to complain. If you think about like the action of complaining, I can't see anything about the action that is reflexive, like logically. As in, if you compare it to like dressing yourself, it's like, yeah, obviously I guess I am kind of doing that to myself because I'm putting like, you know, I'm putting the clothes on me. Or like showering, I guess you could see it as like, you know, you're showering, you're putting the water onto yourself. But like complaining, what part of the process of complaining is reflexive? I genuinely don't know. And yet, both German and Spanish, and I assume French, although I'm not good enough at French to know if this is the case, but possibly French as well, have all decided the verb to complain is going to be reflexive. In Spanish, it's quejarme. Well, quejarse is the infinitive. And then in German, there's actually two verbs for complaining, and they're both reflexive. You could say sich beklagen or sich beschweren. So, ich beschwere mich or ich beklage mich. And there's so many other examples. I wrote down a few of them and now I've forgotten. But I promise you there's more, and it's really interesting to me. I have reached the library, but I'm going to keep walking because I have more things to say. I might just do a little loop of the flower beds. Another really interesting similarity. I guess this one is less surprising. It does really make sense. If anything, it's more surprising that we haven't got this in English. But in both Spanish and German, there's a verb for breakfasting. Like, I mean, I guess you can kind of say that in English, but we don't in practice. We're not like, I got up and I breakfasted. You would just say like, I ate breakfast. But in German, you can say like, frühstücken. And it just means to eat breakfast, to breakfast. And in Spanish, they have desayunar. Yo desayuno. I eat breakfast. I breakfast. Isn't that so cool? Final insane similarity, to me at least, in both German and Spanish. The most common way to say I like something, like, you know, I like this food, or I like this band, this music, whatever, is not to say, like, in the kind of construction we have in English, I, as a subject, like verb. the thing in that order, but rather the most common way is to use a construction that's something along the lines of, to me, pleases this thing. So in German, you would say, mir gefällt die Band Kraftklub zum Beispiel. And in Spanish, you would say, me gusta esta música, me gusta el español, me gusta bailar, por ejemplo. At least as far as I can tell, those two constructions in those two different languages are really conceptually similar. You're saying to me as an indirect pronoun, to me pleases, or, you know, is pleasing this thing that I like. So you're basically saying, you know, this band is pleasing to me. Dancing is pleasing to me. You are pleasing to me. Instead of saying, I like you. It's like the action kind of goes in the opposite direction. And you're making the thing that you like the actual subject of the sentence, and you're the object that it is pleasing to. And that's just fascinating to me because, as I said, those two constructions seem really similar. And it's nothing like how we normally say, I like this thing in English. And I'm just like, why? Do they have a common ancestor, these two, the German and the Spanish, mir gefällt das and me gusta? Or is it a complete coincidence? Or are they unrelated, but there's some kind of logic that makes different languages come up with this? I'm fascinated. If there's anyone who knows more about linguistics, please tell me.